What is up, guys? Randomodium here with your Week 4 Fantasy LCS analysis and predictions video. In this video, I'm going to break down all of the matchups for NA and EU LCS, and I will be discussing some of the results from Week 3, so this is your spoiler warning. But first off, I want to give you guys a little disclaimer about what's going on in my life right now, because it's going to affect you guys. So it's good news for me, it's not so good news for you. But I'm currently in the process of transitioning out of the military, and I'm interviewing with a lot of companies nationwide. And I'm currently pursuing jobs at about 9 different companies. So starting February 15th, I'm going to be traveling all over the country trying to lock up a job with one of these companies, and that's going to probably continue until about March 1st. So it's going to be difficult for me to upload videos, but I am still going to be committed to doing that. I just might get them out a little bit later, and they might not go into as much depth as I normally do. So just bear with me. I apologize in advance, but I'm going to be doing a lot of travel, and I have no idea what my internet connection is going to be like or how much time I'm going to have to be able to put into these videos. So with that, let's get into the video. Alright, so this is our EU strategy. Purple, that's the week where the team has got 2 matches. Green is when you want to draft them. Yellow is where you want to keep them on the bench, but you don't want to get rid of them. And then red is when you actually want to drop them because they no longer have any 2-week matches anymore. So we're currently in week 4, so we're back to G2 and H2K. They've got the 2 matches this week, and actually G2 and H2K play each other. So that creates a little bit of tension because so both of them can't have good weeks. Only one of them can have good weeks. So I think that G2 is going to win. I think G2 looks like the best team in EU right now, which means that H2K is not going to have as good a week as G2. You should also be looking at week 5. We've got Splice and Fnatic are going to be your week 5 teams, and they're actually playing each other in week 5. So Splice plays Fnatic week 5, surprisingly. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that works out as well. So definitely pick up some G2, maybe some H2K players if you need to fill some holes this week, and then be looking at Splice and Fnatic for week 5. Alright, so for the week strategy, if the win-loss is in white, that means I think it's going to be a normal game, normal number of fantasy points. If it's in red, that means I think it's going to be a stomp. So that means less fantasy points for the winning team and a lot less fantasy points for the losing team. And if it's in blue, that means I think it's going to be a really close match, possibly an upset. And these are typically the games that create the most fantasy points because they go on for a long period of time. But they're also a bit higher risk. Alright, so my week 4 S-tier teams are Cloud9, TSM, G2, and FlyQuest. So Cloud9 is going to be against Liquid. I think that's going to be an easy matchup for them. Then they're also going to get FlyQuest. That's going to be a freaking barn burner. That matchup is going to be phenomenal. I think that FlyQuest is going to lose. I think that Cloud9 will edge them out. But I know that FlyQuest is going to have something special. They're going to have some type of cheeky shenanigans planned for Cloud9 because they want to beat Cloud9 more than anything. So that's going to be an awesome match. I can't wait for that. TSM is going against Envy and Echo Fox. I think that TSM will beat Envy no issue. Echo Fox has actually been looking very promising lately. So that one's going to be a bit tougher. I do think that TSM is a stronger team overall, and they should be able to beat Echo Fox. G2 is going against H2K and Origin. I do think that they are a better team than H2K, and I think they're a much better team than Origin, so it should be 2 wins for G2 this week. And then we've already talked about FlyQuest. The other team that they're playing is Phoenix 1. Phoenix 1 has actually been looking very good as well, but I do think that FlyQuest is the better team. A tier, we've got Echo Fox, Phoenix 1, and H2K. So all of these teams have something in common. They're going to go 1-1, I think, this week. But they'll have a lot of really close matches. Echo Fox is going against CLG and TSM. Phoenix 1 is going against FlyQuest and CLG. And then H2K is going against G2 and Roccat. The big thing I also want to talk about is CLG. I have them at B tier right now. They're my first B tier team. But those are the 2 games I think are most likely to be upsets. CLG has shown some promise, and they are a good team. So if anyone's going to get an upset this week, it's going to be CLG. And they could beat either Echo Fox, Phoenix 1, or they could beat both of them. And if CLG winds up beating both of those 2 teams, they will be S tier this week. However, I do give the slight edge to both Echo Fox and Phoenix One right now. I do think that CLG is improving very quickly, and they should turn into a powerhouse towards the end of the split. My next B tier team is Team Liquid. They're going against Cloud9, which I think they're going to lose to Cloud9, and they're going against Immortals. And I do think that Team Liquid will be able to edge out Immortals. I do think that Dardoch will lose to his former team, but I do think it's going to be a close one. It probably will go 3 games, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch. And then my final B tier team is Immortals. They're going against Dignitas and Liquid. I do think they'll be able to beat Dignitas. Dignitas has been looking kind of shaky so far. I do think that they'll lose a close one to Liquid, and even if they beat Liquid, I don't think they're going to get a huge amount of fantasy points, just because Immortals does not seem like they have been putting up that many fantasy points this split. It just seems like the games are going a lot quicker than a lot of other teams. So yeah, I think that definitely is hurting Immortals as far from a fantasy LCS perspective. My C tier teams, I've got Dignitas as the first one. I think they will beat Envy, but they will lose to Immortals. And I have them C tier because even when they win, they don't put up fantasy points. They've been C tier pretty much every single week, regardless of whether they win or lose. So they're going to stay at C tier until they can prove otherwise that they can, move up into B tier, A tier. And then my last NA team in C tier is Envy. They're going against TSM and Dignitas. I think they're going to lose both of those matches. The C tier teams on the EU side, I think it's going to be Misfits, Fnatic, and Unicorns of Love. I think Misfits is going to have a very close game against Splice, but I do think they're going to be able to edge them out. I was incredibly impressed by Misfits in their matchup against Fnatic. However, this is another one of those matches that could go either way. Splice could win this one, and if Splice wins that one, that will definitely give them the edge against Fnatic in Week 5. And I would definitely be looking to pick up Splice players over Fnatic players if Splice beats Misfits. Fnatic is going against Vitality. They're coming off of a pretty disappointing week. They should be able to beat Vitality and regain some of their confidence. And then Unicorns of Love is going against Giants. I think that's going to be an absolute stomp. Unicorns of Love is looking like one of the best teams in Europe right now, so it should be a pretty easy win for them. And then my D tier teams, I've got Splice, Vitality, Roccat, Giants, and Origin. Okay, so let's talk about the team strategy. So if the players are the grade is in purple, that means that the player performs much better than their teammates in that week. If it's yellow, then they played much worse than their teammates in that week. If it's green, that means that it was either the team got a victory or that I got the correct team grade. If it's red, that means that they lost that match or I got the incorrect team grade. And blue is the current week. Okay, first up is Cloud9. They are an S tier team. This is week 4, which is why week 4 is outlined in blue. I think that across the board, they will be S tier, every single player. TSM. They are also S tier this week. The only person who is underperforming on TSM right now, from my perspective, is Svenskeren. He has not been putting up a lot of fantasy points. I think that just about everybody should be S tier on TSM, except maybe Svenskeren, who will probably be around A tier. Alright, next up is G2. I think G2 has the potential to be the highest point scorers this week, especially Sven and Trick. But I think that they're all going to be S tier. But I especially have my eyes on Sven and Trick. And then finally, we've got FlyQuest. I also think that they're going to be S tier. I definitely think that the people that are most likely to be S tier this week are going to be Moon and High. Balls could get up there, just depending, and they could be S tier in the team range. But it's kind of uncertain. They're kind of that A tier, maybe S tier, just because they're going up against Cloud9 this week. And that is going to hurt their overall point values. Okay, Echo Fox. I think they're going to go 1-1 this week. They should have a good mix of S tier, A tier, and B tier. I think the people who are most likely to get S tier are going to be Acadian and Froggen. And I think that Keith has been struggling the most out of anyone on the team. And then they haven't been putting up that many team points, so those are probably the B tiers that I'm looking at right now. Okay, so next up we got Phoenix 1. The only person who I think is going to probably be S tier on Phoenix 1 this week is probably Arrow. Though I do think that Ryu will put up decent fantasy points, and Nori will put up good fantasy points, and Zig will put up good fantasy points. Adrian has not been putting up as good fantasy points as a lot of his other teammates, but he will put up decent fantasy points this week, and overall they'll be around an A tier. H2K, also an A tier team. I think across the board they should be right around A tier. It's possible that one of them might break out and get S tier. I think that Odoamne, Yankos, or Fevabin are the most likely. I haven't been seeing that many great things from Nuclear or Shea yet. So I think, you know, those three are probably your best picks for S tier. COG, this is a really interesting one. So COG has not been performing well, but if you look at their results, they're actually doing really well. I mean, in week 2, they went 0-2. They lost to FlyQuest and lost to Cloud9, and yet they had 3 people who were A tier. And then in week 3, they went 1-1, and yet they had 4 people who were S tier and 2 people who were A tier. So CLG, even though they are not winning, they're putting up a ridiculous amount of fantasy points for a losing team. So that's kind of driving my decision this week that I think that they are going to be really solid B tier. Even though I do think that they're going to lose both their games, I think that both their games are going to be really close. And if CLG is able to upset one of these 2 teams or both of them, they will shoot up to S tier. So if you need to take a risk on someone, I would take the risk on CLG this week. I think CLG is going to be vastly underrated this week, and if you need to go for that Hail Mary, pick up some CLG players because they have the potential to really pop off this week. All right, next up is Team Liquid. I think they're a pretty solid B tier team this week. Lorlo and Rainover are the people that I'm watching that could be A tier, maybe even higher, most likely A tier though. So those would be the 2 people I'd be looking at picking up if they're available as free agents. All right, Immortals. This has definitely been kind of interesting because the Immortals in general has not been performing up to, I think, what their expectations are. And as far from a fantasy perspective, they haven't been playing that well either. Flame has been getting very few fantasy points. Dardoch has been kind of hit or miss. He seems like he's stabilizing a little bit more. Cody Sun and Ollie in the bot lane have been kind of struggling, and then Pobelter has just been kind of lackluster. He's been C tiered every single week. So if I was gonna pick some people up from Immortals, I'd definitely be looking at Dardoch. He's probably the best. Cody Sun could be a good flex spot if you don't have anyone better. Ollie maybe if you don't have any decent supports, but I would probably stay away from Flame and Pobelter, and I definitely stay away from them on the team point side as well. Dignitas, another team like Immortals that is really struggling to put up decent fantasy points. Someday, at first, he was putting up, C tier. He seems like he's doing better. They're putting Someday on more carries, but he's starting to draw a lot more bans. So it's very interesting to see how teams are evolving to counter Dignitas, because Someday is obviously the carry on that team. So a lot of teams are just banning out all the carry top laners and forcing him onto some, second tier champion and seeing if he can carry from that role as well. So he's probably your best bet for, anyone on Dignitas. But I think overall they're going to be a pretty average C tier team this week. Envy, I think that they're going to be C tier across the board. The only person who's been putting up decent fantasy points, even though Envy has been losing, has been Apollo. Week 1, he was S tier. Week 3, he was B tier. I think he has a chance of being B tier again in week 4, even though Envy is going to lose both their games. But he's probably the only person that I would possibly have, and I'd probably only put him in as a flex spot. All right, moving on into the EU side. So Misfits. So Misfits, I think, is going to be pretty average C tier this week. They only have one match this week. They're going against Splice. That should be a match that generates a lot of fantasy points. I think that Cacao could be B tier. I think Hansama could be B tier. I think probably the rest of the team is probably going to be around C tier, but solid C tier. Fnatic, definitely a bit disappointed in Fnatic. After their week 3, they definitely performed. They were underwhelming in their performance. This week they're going against Vitality. They should be able to win that match, but they should be C tier across the board. Unicorns of Love looks freaking amazing. Definitely C tier, and I'm definitely looking at picking them up for week 6 because they definitely look very, very strong. Splice, I think they're going to lose a close one to Misfits. If they beat Misfits, they will move up to C tier. but I think it's more likely that they will lose. I think that the people who are most likely to get C tier out of Splice are Wonder and Mickey X. So those are the two I'm watching, but I would kind of avoid Splice this week. Vitality, D tier across the board, I'd avoid them. Rockhat, same story, D tier across the board, I'd avoid them. Giants, also D tier, avoid them. And Origin, D tier across the board, so definitely avoid them. So let's talk about my record so far at prediction. So if it's if I got 80 to 100%, I consider that giving myself an S, and that's in purple. Red, 70 to 79%. A. Blue is B, 60 to 69%. Green is C, 50 to 59%. If I get less than 50%, then I get a D, which is yellow. So week 2, I definitely got the grades were a bit off, but I was really accurate on my prediction of the matches. Week 3, I've kind of gone back to exactly how I was in week 1. So 65% of the time I'm guessing the correct grade that the team will get, like overall, and then 75% of the time I'm correctly predicting the result of the match, like who's going to win and who's going to lose. So I'm still performing pretty well. I still think that I have room for improvement, but I'm pretty happy considering all the distractions I have going on right now with my performance so far. So let me know what your guys' feedback are in the comments below. And if you've reached this point in the video, then you're obviously one of the dedicated people who watches my videos. And I wanted to just thank you guys, like really thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Over the past month, we've added over 130 new subscribers. That's a massive increase in the channel. So I was at 200 something subscribers a month ago, and now I'm nearing 400 subscribers. So I really got to thank you guys. The channel growth is amazing. I hope it keeps going the same way. If it does, then I'm going to try and start building up a better community. If the channel eventually starts making money, starts making a profit, then I'm going to start doing giveaways. I'm going to try and start giving back to you guys and doing either games with you guys, like fan games, or whatever else you guys want to do. If there's something in particular that you guys want to see me do, leave a comment below, and I'll be happy to try and do that when we reach a milestone, if we reach like 500 or 1,000 subscribers. So yeah, thank you guys so much for all the support. Thank you guys for all your comments. I love answering all your guys' questions. It definitely makes my day. So once again, thank you. I hope you all have a fantastic day. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and you made it this far, you definitely should subscribe. But yeah, good luck you guys in your fantasy leagues. If you guys are in one of my fantasy leagues, stop kicking my ass. But I hope you guys have a great week. This is Randomonium signing off.